Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday, March 27th, open session for the Carroll County Commissioners. And as we always like to start our meetings, we'll do a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Priority, Carol, I think we start on the left.
That's fine. Yeah.
Do we care? I don't know.
No, I don't. That's right.
Commissioner Rothstein, you're first.
Okay. Just a couple of things. One, on Saturday, Audrey and I attended the Sykesville Freedom District's firehouse 91st anniversary, and that was always a good time. Always impressed with the camaraderie, in events like that. And they also give out longevity awards. They give out a bunch of different awards in recognition. But the longevity recognition, it reminds me when, I was in command a long time ago. You have young firemen and women and medics and whoever is a part of the firehouse getting 5-year awards, 10-year awards, 15-year, all the way up till I think there was like a 60-plus year award. There's an individual there who's 90 and was recognized. It's these firehouses are our community, and it's just always a blessing to participate in those and be invited, and to just say thank you to both the men and women in red and the men and women in blue to be a part of our community. So that was some cool stuff. Yesterday. Yeah, I think it was yesterday. The Police Academy, class number 8, graduated. Congratulations to Sheriff DeWeese and his team at the Academy down in, up in North Carroll, the Pantherplex. We attended again to be able to congratulate those young men and women, both here in Sykesville, in Carroll County Sheriff's Department. I think there was a Westminster. There was some Frederick. There was Bowie, Bel Air. It was pretty cool to recognize those graduates, but then also to sit back and listen to some awards that were provided from 2024 to the men and women in blue for different activities, whether it be saving somebody's life from an 11-year-old, I think drowning victim was recovered and saved, and to lots of different activities to keeping our community out of harm's way through the technology of drones and persistence of surveillance and reconnaissance and action. And it makes you feel better that you can sleep more comfortable at night knowing that the men and women in blue are there. And we take the opportunity to thank them and also recognize them yesterday. Commissioner Kyler and I attended the Rec and Parks Advisory Board meeting. Important board, just like all of our boards and commissions, and this is my paid political advisement. I guess not political, but we need help. We need help from the community to continue to volunteer for advisory boards and commissions. You know, I feel confident that I know what I know, but I also feel confident and continuing to feel more confident knowing what I don't know. And the five of us up here don't have the experience, expertise, skill set, eyes and ears to do all the things that I believe are necessary in our community. So we rely on a lot of volunteers. And the Rec and Parks Advisory Board is being one of them. The parks themselves being run and supported by volunteers is just amazing. We could not do the things we do without our volunteers. But if you're interested in a specific board or commission, it's so readily available. One is you can either call one of us, but also on the website for applications. And anybody and everybody is eligible for something. So appreciate attending that. And then lastly, I participate in our governor's Workforce Development Board. I've been a part of that for a handful of years. And yesterday, it's representation from across the state, from businesses, government, and academia. And yesterday's topic, for a large part of it, had to do with now what? Now what do we do when federal government is changing their posture in Maryland and their workforce in Maryland? There are hiring events across Maryland that are getting a lot of attention. There's still a lot of skills out there with younger than me, and much younger than Commissioner Kyler, but that have some serious skills to offer. And, you know, what do you do when you have 10 years and all of a sudden you're, you know, told, okay, federal government's no longer an option at this point, find another opportunity. That's what this yesterday's subject was about. There's a lot of federal employees in Carroll County. There's a lot of employees in Carroll County that are reliant on federal contracts and federal opportunities and services. So there's change, whether it's good, bad, whatever your opinion is regardless, there's change. And how do we maintain and keep up with that change? And that's what yesterday's discussion was about. And that's all for now, but thanks.
Very well spoken until the age discrimination.
There's no age discrimination,
I
it's
think
facts.
you were intimidating Commissioner Vigliotti
No.
on his speech, so.
I feel a lot younger
It
now.
was just facts, you know. Call it like I say it.
Commissioner Vigliotti, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Kyler. Good morning, everybody. Just two quick things today. First of all, I want to associate myself with Commissioner Rothstein's comments about the Sheriff's Training Academy graduation, not about Commissioner Kyler's age. It really was a pleasure to join my friends up here at that graduation for the 8th class. And I'm really grateful to see so many men and women entering law enforcement, especially when popular culture and some politicians still create such negative conditions for those men and women. You know, we certainly support law enforcement in Carroll County, and we know that we could not get along without them. So I want to congratulate everyone who graduated and to welcome all of those who are joining the Sheriff's Department or the Westminster. I think Westminster was one of the other ones yesterday who's gaining somebody, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
So welcome to everybody who's serving in Carroll County, and God bless all of you. And second, we have an update regarding the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. And so we learned as of yesterday, the Maryland Department of Natural Resources Power Plant Research Program has analyzed and determined that PSEG's application for the power lines with the Maryland Public Service Commission is incomplete and has made note of this to the PSC, highlighting a number of issues, including why alternative routes were rejected, why routes with lesser environmental impacts were rejected, a failure to define critical terms like unreasonable costs for alternative routes, why routes with the greatest percentage of paralleling to existing power lines were rejected, why existing power lines could not be used, a lack of information about project impacts, and of particular interest to me, the use of, quote, certain unclear or misleading terminology in comparisons between routes made without context. I think as of yesterday as well, the group Stop MPRP has links directly to that report. It's certainly worth reading. And for me, I also think it's interesting to note how cavalier and unaccountable PSEG has been, as all of these items that have been listed in this report have been identified as requests for more information by our citizens, by groups like Stop MPRP, by us commissioners, by our delegation, by federal officials, and PSEG has not been forthcoming about a lot of that. And I think that as we prepare our own case to take before the PSC in the coming year to go against the power lines, I think that's something we ought to include in the case that we make. And that's all for me this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gordon.
Thank you. Good morning. Just have a couple things this morning. Wanted to start off with something a little lighthearted, if I could. March 23rd was National Puppy Day. I don't know if Chris has got the photos or not, but wanted just to mention that briefly. Obviously, a lot of us are dog lovers, so, you know, always nice to have a little unconditional love from animals in our lives and not be able to de-stress a bit at times. Secondly, wanted to mention that had the opportunity last week to be a part of the Veterans Independence Project. They're putting in a number of items over there and doing a remodel. They're putting in a washer and showers for veterans. The event included former Delegate Krebs, former Delegate, now State's Attorney Shoemaker, Delegate Reedy was also there in attendance, as were a number of Westminster City Council members. So always good to see additional things for our veterans in the community. A couple other Westminster things I want to mention very briefly. We have a new tag and title service, Magic, which is located in Westminster, which is a 20-year, two veterans that are, when I say veterans, veterans of the tag and title industry that have been in the industry for 20 years that just opened this business in Westminster. Wanted to mention that. Also, another good local Carroll County Westminster business is Covalent Spirits, just earned 5 medals in the 2025 American Craft Spirits Competition. Congratulations to both of them. Also wanted to mention, I know some people have been curious about this, on 27 there is a boardwalk to speak of. That is not a city project, nor is that a county project. That is being done by the Maryland Department of Transportation to allow sidewalk access on 27. While I think it's nice that we're adding access, I do have to question, given the financial constraints with a $3 billion deficit for the state, what kind of money we're spending on this kind of a project. But just to let all of our taxpayers know, this is not a county project, nor is it a City of Westminster project.
This makes me want Thrasher's fries.
Well, you could ride a bike up and down it if you wanted, I suppose. And last but certainly not least, heartfelt congratulations to all the 15 graduates of Class 8 yesterday at the graduation of the law enforcement class out in Hampstead, which myself and a number of my colleagues were in attendance. Always a great event, and always good to hear some of the awards and recognition that are given not only to our law enforcement, but some of the individuals in the community, and definitely a positive event to be in attendance of. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Guerin.
Good morning, Carroll County. Got a couple comments per Commissioner Gordon's, some of his remarks. Yeah, thank you to Jason Sidock and CCVIP and the work you do. And, you know, it's interesting, you mentioned the sidewalk crossings. I don't know if people have been paying attention in Annapolis, but there's a debate going on right now about whether to spend money on animal crossings. So some of their priorities are misplaced for sure. Not necessarily that one, but some of their others are certainly misplaced. I just want to spend a couple minutes this morning talking about Winfield Volunteer Fire Company. They will celebrate their 60th year of existence this weekend, both the auxiliary and the station itself. The term community is overused in today's political realm because it just doesn't quite identify who that is. But in terms of Winfield Fire Department, having lived in that area and gone to South Carroll, they are truly the backbone of the community down there. And you've got families, you know, the Bakers, the Broussards, the Legores, the Farvers, generations of people and they will celebrate again their 60th anniversary this weekend. I'm always pleased that that my fellow colleagues are always bringing up the fact that you do need to support your local fire department still. That hasn't changed, and I appreciate it being mentioned earlier. But my congratulations to Winfield Fire Company for 60 years of dedicated service, both in response, but also the families, the fundraising efforts that take place. Just a wonderful, wonderful community of public safety and first responders down there. So my thanks to them and congratulations. And that's all for me.
Thank you. And I'll be quick because you guys have mentioned 90% of what I wanted to say. Rec and Parks Advisory Board, that was an awesome meeting. And I also had all boards, you covered that too. And the only thing I would like to add, any of the people that serve on any of our boards or commissions, if you, don't be afraid to send an email to the commissioners if you have a question about something. It's so nice to attend some of the meetings, and all of us do. And there's always seems to be good discussion at it, but then I feel like when we can't get to one, I don't want them to lose any input from us. So please email us or call us and talk. Sheriff's training, and that was awesome, and the awards, and the sheriff, he runs that like clockwork. He apologized because the ending was 5 minutes later than he predicted, but that was pretty good. There was a public information session on NPDES permit for Hampstead wastewater treatment plant, and some of our public works people were on that, and just a good information session. Also, yesterday, there was a solar hearing for the Cape Horn Road project. No public comments, but the attorneys, the contractor, the landowner, everybody gave reports, and that was a very good meeting. And we've tried to make sure that a commissioner co-host, which they allow us, PSC allows us to co-host with their judge. We've done that. Unfortunately, 2 of the meetings, they didn't give us the link in time to get on it, even though they approved that we could co-host, but they just didn't let us. But that's good. And I just want the public to know, if you don't see one of the commissioners on one of those meetings, it's probably because of them, not us. We're trying to be on every one. Budget, we're spending a lot of time on budget right now, and if you have comments or thoughts about that, please let us know. PSEG, and you mentioned some of that, and I just, I want to emphasize what PSEG is going to say to the Public Service Commission is they can't do everything from the air. They can't evaluate all this from the air. Carroll County has told them they're not allowed on our property. A lot of other people in Carroll County have, and they're going to blame that for the delay, but in my opinion, that's a good thing. They can't have a valid application to do this job if they can't get on people's property. And I told them that early on. No offense to New Jersey people, but I said, you're in Carroll County now. The fact that you want to throw some money at this isn't going to impress people. They're not going to let you on their property. And so far, that's worked out. My last thing, and I always talk a little bit about wrestling, and I was at Philadelphia for the D1 Wrestling Championships, and this isn't political, this is just a statement of fact. Our current president came for the finals, sat on the floor, congratulated every All-American at every weight, and just that was awesome. There was probably 10 people there, a senator from Pennsylvania, his press people, Elon Musk in his sweatshirt. Everybody else had ties on. But it's just awesome that they come and do that. Well, then last night I talked to Secret Service guy, ex-Marine, Purple Heart. I mean, those guys are amazing. It was interesting because I told him, I said, Miss Rhonda was looking for you because if you were in Philly, we thought you could get us a better seat near the president. Well, he wasn't because Vice President Vance wanted to go to Camp David with these 3 kids, and so he was there. But we talked about security, and I just said, here is the President of the United States sitting on the floor, Secret Service and security wasn't that visible. There were more uniformed people in the building, but he's sitting there in the middle of 18,000 people. And one of the wrestlers grabbed him like Butler happens. These Secret Service people, they are just awesome, and they do their job. They're discreet about it. And I think he must very much test them on how to keep him safe. And I just think it was awesome to hear from their side of the fence how it is. And some more of that maybe I'll share with you guys. I don't want to get political, but they've done a lot of presidents. I'm done for priority, Carol, and we're ready for a legislative update.
We do
Morning.
have a.
Good morning,
sorry.
Pam.
Morning, Pam. How are you today?
Sorry, excuse me.
Oh, you have a public
We
comment for
do
it.
have a public comment card for legislative update, if you want to do that.
Yeah, let's do that first.
Ms. Julie Walsh, excuse me.
Hi, thank you so much. Good morning. My name is Julie Walsh. I'm a stay-at-home mother to 5 children in Mount Airy. My kids are in 1st through 9th grades in 4 different Carroll County public schools. I have been a volunteer in the schools for 10 years, and I'm currently PTO president of 2 of the elementary schools. I happen to have a professional background as a lobbyist in Annapolis. I actually used to serve in a coalition with Ms. Meister. And so I have been working with other Carroll County parents that you're aware of through this new Carroll Education Coalition. And I just want to report to you on what we've been doing in Annapolis. So since mid-February, we have been in Annapolis almost every week, walking the halls, talking to staff and legislators, testifying on the governor's education bill, advocating for amendments to the bill. We've been, quite frankly, working our tails off down there over and over again, trying to make them understand the situation in Carroll and to advocate for flexibility from the state side. We've also been tracking the developments of the AIB and watching their meetings. And we have accumulated an online following of over 2,000 people and a mailing list of hundreds, and we have been encouraging them to contact our state officials and to advocate for flexibility. And you know, as anyone who deals with legislation knows, it is a slog. It is a real slog, and you may not get the exact outcomes that you hope for, but you can still make a difference. And we have heard over and over again from legislators' offices that they are hearing from Carroll like they never have before. They are getting a lot of weigh-in, and they're paying attention. We've even been learning which staffers have family and personal connections to Carroll. So it's been a lot of hard work, but it's been interesting. And I just wanted to report to you on what we've been doing and to let you know that, yes, we are coming to you with some asks, but we have also been working our tail off on making asks of Annapolis, because we know that the difficulties facing the school system were not created from one side, and the solutions got to come from different bodies. So I just wanted to inform you of what we're doing and introduce myself and say that we look forward to working with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's it, thank you.
And interesting, like the commissioners saying everything I wanted to say. Thanks for coming. And one of the things I wanted to mention, if you follow social media, it questions why we don't have anybody in Annapolis, why we didn't care about Blueprint prior to this year. And I'm so glad that Carroll County's very passionate about it this year. Several of us have been to Annapolis almost once a week for years, and I know I personally, through MABE, started fighting Blueprint back when it was still the Curran Commission, and pretty much anybody that paid attention back then predicted this year coming. And one of the sad parts, I think, so many people love Blueprint because it was going to help educators with their pay. And I said back then, if they do it like they plan, we're going to get to a point where the schools can't afford to give the teachers raises because of the other Blueprint expenses. And that's where we are now. And I hope you guys and others talk to AIB a bunch, talk to MSDE a bunch, and more importantly, to the teachers' unions, because they still love Blueprint and really pressure people to follow through with it. And I think it's going to hurt educators and who they represent, supposedly. So I wanted to mention that to start, but as before Pam did, but you kind of covered it nicely, so thank you. So good morning, Pam.
Hey, Kenny, just real quick. I just wanted to, again, same regard, say thank you. And, my continued advice is let's keep the foot on the pedal. And this is not the time to slow down in talking to Annapolis. This is not the time to slow down in talking to us to ensure we understand your priorities. Your being collective, our community, Carroll County community. You said it very well, and I appreciate the selflessness and tireless, hours you spend along with those down in Annapolis. But we can't do it alone, just like you cannot do it directly alone. It's got to be everyone. Everyone has the opportunity to email and, just collect your thoughts to our legislators, our delegation, our legislators, key legislators, our AIB, everyone involved, and keep putting Carroll County on the forefront. We're being listened to. We just need to continue until we see it all the way through, But appreciate you coming in and saying that.
Commissioners, anything else? No, thank you. Okay, good morning, Pam.
Good morning.
Again.
Can you see my slides?
Yep, we got you. How are you today?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
Thanks for asking. So today's update is going to be a little different than those that I've previously been given. At the end of your packet, there are the slides that update you on the bills that we've been talking about throughout session. And for the most part, they just sort of say status quo because the focus of this week has been on the budget, which is what I'm going to speak to primarily today. As you know, and as anyone else watching likely knows, Maryland has faced an excess of $3 billion deficit this year, and lawmakers are tasked with the responsibility to cut spending and increase revenue to balance this budget. The House this week passed both the operating budget and the Budget Reconciliation Financing Act, which was their side of things. And on the slide that you have that looks like this in your packet, commissioners, you'll see a couple of links that I provided if you do want to look, and I can also forward them to you via email, of just all of the amendments and descriptions and reports, and there's hundreds and hundreds of pages. So what I'm going to try to do today is start off by talking a little bit about the process. I know you're all aware of this, but I don't know that everyone else watching is, and I think it's important to give this context so that those who are advocating for this understand the complexity of the tasks before the governor, the General Assembly, and all of you in advocating for Carroll's best interests in the administration in the county. I'm not going to go into every little detail, but I do think it's important for people to see that this isn't a year-long process. This isn't something that just happens during session. It starts with departments providing information to the governor and the governor putting together his proposed budget, and then session is when the General Assembly intervenes, and it becomes a year-long process. So this is something available on the state's website, and I can forward to anybody that needs a copy, but it's outlined pretty clearly for you commissioners, just so you have some of the nuts and bolts here. But I think just to kind of dial it down a little bit and talk about a few things so that anyone watching understands where we're at in the process. Governor Moore, and any governor, has executive powers to set the revenue estimates that establish the basis for state spending. And the governor is required to submit the balanced budget to the General Assembly early on in session. And then the proposal includes all of the planned expenditures for the fiscal year. And there's like the budget bill, and then there's a detailed books that the legislators get. And it's a very big process. And I'm explaining this because if anyone listened to any piece of the House debate over the last few days this week, you're going to hear lots of references to why people have asked a special order, which means wait on some of the discussion for the bills, and why they're speaking to these complexities, because it's very difficult and a lot of work for people to understand each individual line item, but also how it impacts things. So I'm going to try to glaze over today and review some of the things that we've talked about that I think specifically are a priority for Carroll County. But if there's anything that I haven't touched on that anyone has an interest on, let me know, and I can make sure that I research this and let you know where it stands currently in the process. But at this point, I think it's important to recognize where we are, which is the legislative piece of this. And the General Assembly can only cut the budget. They cannot add to the budget, and they cannot rearrange items in the budget. And this is something that a lot of people don't understand. And I think it's very important to touch on as we go into this, because it's required that the state operating budget is balanced when it's submitted to the General Assembly. The governor cannot veto it once the legislature has passed the bill, and the operating budget becomes law immediately. So there's only so much that the General Assembly can sometimes do to change things as well at this stage. And that's why it's important to stay engaged throughout the year. So if there are things that we're hearing and seeing and disliking that we can't change right now, we can talk about that for the next budget. But getting into the particulars of where things stand right now and jumping right in there have been from the House perspective, they've gone through the bill. The Appropriations Committee and the subcommittees have all gone through all the hearings. They've been reviewing all of the things that we've sent letters on and others have sent letters on. And this is where their budget has passed and where they are landing on some of these issues. For the major budget cuts, they're saving towards the $3 billion, about 2/3 of that here through making reductions. It's cutting some state jobs. There's reductions to Medicaid in certain areas, to some of the child meal programs, tourism budget, some anti-poverty grants. And this is pretty significant, and obviously something that everyone has an opinion on what should have been cut versus what shouldn't have been cut. But there are also tax increases through legislation and such that are contributing to raise the other $1 billion. And these are important, I think, to go through, because what you would hear if you listen to the debate, and I'm going to get a little bit into that shortly, is a lot of conversation about how no one's being taxed, or very few people are being taxed in the state. But they're talking about your income taxes. These taxes are widely impactful across the state, and something that most people at some point will see in their wallets, and the things that I think you see on a local level more indirectly, I guess. And something that we've talked about a lot of these issues, but I want to go through a few of them for you now so you know where they stand. There are a few others, but I tried to pick the ones that I think we've heard the most about. So to help fill the remaining budget gap, the House is planning to raise $1 billion by increasing a 3% tax on IT services, which is about $500 million, applying the 6% sales tax to vending machine sales, increasing the excise tax on vehicles 0.8%, so from 6% to 6.8%. There's a higher cannabis sales tax for legal marijuana purchases going from 9 to 12%. There's an increase to the tax on sports betting by 5%, which is 15 to 20%. They're increasing income tax rates on individual earnings above $500,000 to 6.25%, which is up from 5.75%. And for those people who earn above $1 million, it's going from 5.75% to 6.5%. Governor Moore has said that the increase for affected Marylanders would average about $1,800. The limit on tax deductions, it's continuing to allow taxpayers to itemize deductions on their taxes, but limiting how much can be deducted for people who earn more than $200,000. Increasing the standard deduction that individuals can claim on their taxes by 20% to $3,500 for individual taxpayers and $6,700 for joint filers. There's a 2% surcharge added to capital gains for filers with more than $350,000 of income, with a portion of that money going to transportation funding. They're setting a maximum local income tax rate of 3.3% for counties in Baltimore City, which is a 0.1% increase. It's 3.2% currently, and enacting a corporate tax reform called combined reporting. So while all this is happening, there are some programs that were up for cuts or things that we were worried about at different points may not keep funding. These include restoring $300 million supporting people with developmental disabilities, which had previously been cut by the governor. They've put that back in the House. A $27 million for Trade Point Atlantic, which is a business development project. $200 million was set for state employee salary raises, $5 million for juvenile services, and $52 million for cancer research that was at risk of federal funding. Additionally, the Blueprint formulas are fully funded, and that's something that obviously we've talked a lot about, and there's different definitions for that.
Pam?
Yes.
And I know you've heard it, and I just wanted to mention, and the bullet point's correct, the formulas are fully funded, Blueprint isn't fully funded, and
Right.
Our public comment mentioned we don't feel it's fair for Carroll County, and I'm so glad that so many people were making the noise about it. But one of the talking points, you've heard it with MACO, the formulas were created in, I think, 2018, and there's been no adjustment to the dollars for inflation in 6 years. So that hurts us even a little bit more.
Yes, so that actually is a really great segue to when I talk about the political debate, because a lot of what is being talked about really isn't accurate exactly the way you're talking about Blueprint. It's fully funded based on the formula, but the formula doesn't fully fund what the counties need. So there's a lot of things that are happening like that. There's a line item in the budget, and I'm not going to say this 100% accurately, I know right now, because it's escaping me the term they use, but there's like a huge amount of money, like millions and millions of dollars, that they just basically said we'll figure out later. But it balanced the budget the way they passed it, but it's still undetermined where that money is coming from. So there's a lot of things, if you really understand and look at the details and are in all of the backroom conversations, that appear to have a balanced budget or appear to have not a lot of taxes on Marylanders, but in reality, that's not actually where it's going to fall down. When you look at some of the impacts to the local governments, even beyond Blueprint, it's not as bad as it was proposed, but it's really significant given all of these different issues that are taking on, because Blueprint's not the only thing that's kind of set up in that way where there's an inadequate funding formula or something else that's not trickling down. So thank you for clarifying that. And that is something that everyone in Annapolis who's advocating even for Blueprint and support, I think, is starting to understand. And it's something that many of, I'm going to generalize today when I talk about Democrats and Republicans and all the politics. It's mainly because when listening to like over 6 hours of debate yesterday and some more the day before, this is what I heard for the most part. And when you look at votes, it's mostly along party lines. So I'm trying to summarize a lot of information, but you're hearing that, a lot of Republicans are concerned about the long-term financial risks and the higher taxes and how we got here. Even some Democrats made comments like this. A lot of members are saying, I'm owning the fact that this is not the current administration or even the federal government in their current situation that brought us here. This is decade-plus long poor management of our fiscal operations. And you've heard for many years before I was sitting in this seat, with my predecessor and others, I'm sure, that decisions have been made by the General Assembly to fund or to cut things, but in a way that maybe wasn't thinking super long term about where things could go, or if things didn't stay on a positive trajectory with the economy. So you'll hear a lot if you listen to the members talking arguments that there's a lot more financial trouble in the future because there weren't even deep enough cuts made. One member, the minority leader stood up and said, if we don't have the money, we can't pay for it. So nobody wants to cut this. It's often villainizing different people, whether it's based on partisan politics or anything, to say, you're cutting this, you're cutting that. It's not that any of these members, I think, want to cut most of these programs that are going to help people, but the money has to come from somewhere. And for many years, I think the perception by a lot of the members, at least what they were portraying in their debate over the last few days, is that this has been kind of kicking the can down the road, and now we have a huge issue, but it's not going away. And for some of you commissioners who I know were sitting alongside me at the MACO conference when we heard a couple of presentations by economists and people that really understand the numbers, they showed the current $3 billion deficit with graphs showing what's going to happen even if we solve that in future years. So this is something that I think is going to be really important for the state at all levels of government, and even other states to be looking at and understanding how we can do better so that we're not in these situations where people who are relying on services and needs and stuff for basic livelihood and different programs that are important to different jurisdictions and areas are in such jeopardy because of the way money is either managed or mismanaged, and these decisions that are really hard to make may need to be made at certain points in order to get things in order. Because if you don't have, if you go to the store to buy bread and it costs $3 and you only have $2, they're not going to give you the bread. It's the same thing. Democrats often said that they're trying to protect these services and helping Marylanders in need, and they kept speaking to that. It was a big debate back and forth. And I was reading an article this morning, actually, just while I was waiting for this to start, and it was kind of humorous in how the members, obviously address people very formally, like gentlewoman, gentle lady, gentleman, friend, but it didn't feel very friendly in some of the debates. And I can say that was true because people feel very passionate. They're all coming, there with, I think, what they believe is, the interests of their constituents in mind, and it's not always the same. So as much as we're going through some of these changes from the House, we're going to see different things coming out of the Senate, and none of this is set in stone. So it's really important that we continue to advocate, and I'm happy to see, that we have people going regularly to Annapolis for issues that are important to them from the county. And we need to continue to do that over the last couple of weeks of session, because this isn't done. There's still changes that could be made. The Senate, we'll talk about that in a minute, but the Senate has their say. So some of the different arguments that are made are outlined in your notes. I don't need to go through all of them, but I do think it's important that some of the lawmakers, and I referenced this before, are claiming that 94% of residents are going to see no tax increases. But I think that, as you can see by what I've outlined here, it may not be direct to their income taxes, but it's going to be in other ways. So it's important to look at some of those increases in the proposed cuts and such. And if there's anything that you think really is disproportionately going to affect Carroll County, let's talk. Because at this point, what's happening next, the Senate is going to review this bill and make changes before the final version is approved. And then there'll be a conference committee to go through the differences. And likely they'll look at finalizing transportation funding and some other of the more nuanced issues. And I think that's important to really think about. And in addition to just talking about the operating budget, we've talked about some key concerns for the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act. The BRFA is what we call it. And from what I saw, I believe at this point, the House blocked the full shift of the teacher pension cuts to appropriate, so it's only the 50%, not the 100% shift, excuse me. Cuts to program open space funding and reductions to the enterprise zone tax credits. But there's still the partial shift, that we were thinking was more likely of $97.7 million for the teacher pension costs that we're going to have to bear at the local level. And there's also the SDAT funding requirement. So it went from a much smaller reduction to a 90-10 split. There's a phase out of teacher retirement supplemental grants, which was cut in half by 2026 and eliminated by 2027. Counties are also now looking at 50% of wrongful incarceration compensation settlements. And when you look at some of these numbers, they're not small. So the SDAT cost shift, for example, for all the counties, it's 90% of a $21.2 million budget, but there's no control over operations. So that was a lot of what MACO and others were talking about in this being a problem, to just basically writing a check for something they have no control over. I'm trying to think if there's anything else important that I haven't. Yes, so, what's next? While the Senate also looks at the BRFA, because that's going over to them, counties are gonna need to figure out how to absorb these costs. And you're looking at the budget now, of course. And, while trying to avoid worst-case scenarios at all levels, there's a lot trickling down. So, as you look at what's going on through your budget process, we still have a couple weeks left. Please, I invite you to call me, email me, let me know your thoughts if there's anything else that we can do to voice issues now, whether or not it makes a difference for this fiscal year budget or future year budgets. Going back to that initial slide when we started talking about it, this is a cyclical process that goes on from year to year, and the problem is not going to end regardless of what comes out by sine die. So that's what's been happening. Annapolis has been very budget focused. You can see at the end of your packet again all of the legislation that we've been tracking. I anticipate next week likely having many more updates of bills that have passed, I would think. If not, definitely the following week, or bills that aren't going anywhere. But it looks like things are starting to slowly move. But the budget was really the central focus of everything going on this week.
Commissioners?
No, I appreciate it.
Thank you as always, Pam. Phenomenal, thorough, and certainly helps keep us informed.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. I've
Be in
got one
touch.
question / comment. So, in terms of the taxation increase on cannabis that is being proposed, other states have already seen how those tax increases. A lot of states have already seen how the legalization of cannabis has actually increased the number of non-licensed sellers and growers to sell their product on the open market, because at that point nobody knows where it's coming from and whether it's being legally sold or not. So I'm just sort of shocked, I guess, but not surprised that increase in cannabis taxes, the effect of it is just simply going to be driving more people to purchase cannabis that is not regulated. And once people have it, you don't know where it comes from. It's not like a can of beer or something to that effect. It is what it is. So was there any discussion or realization of that in Annapolis, that this tax increase is actually going to really reduce the amount of revenues coming in and just make the situation even that more acute and worse? Was there any discussion of that at all, that this is going to make things worse?
I'll have to go back and listen specifically for that. It's not coming to mind, but it very well could have been brought up and I just didn't hear it, or it could have happened behind closed doors. It's a very good point. And it's something that I think when you look at a lot of issues, like, these are the important things to raise as the counterbalance, because right now, a lot of what I've seen on a lot of different issues has really just been focused on finding money. It's like a lot of these things I think have been glazed over more, even if they're touched upon, because the deficit is so huge that everyone's trying to just solve that problem. But I think that's really important to raise. And I will go back and see if I can find anything in any of the hearings or even subcommittee conversations, and reach out and see if anyone has heard that point. And if not, I think it's something important.
Frozen in time.
Cliffhanger.
Well, no, I
And the
appreciate
gods
it.
from
I appreciate
technology
your
have
comments.
spoken.
Yeah, I appreciate her comments. That's all from me.
Okay, and I think your screen might be frozen, so if you can hear us, thank you very much.
back.
And, yeah, you're back. Thank you very much, and we'll hear from you next week.
Okay, thanks. Have a great day.
And we'll bug you before next week.
Yes.
See ya. Okay, Citizen Service is going to talk us about an application and acceptance of award for youth and family engagement diversion application and acceptance.
Good morning to you both.
Morning.
Morning, Commissioners.
Morning, Commissioners.
As you know, I'm Celine Steckel, the Director of Citizen Services, and I'm joined by Ed Singer, who is our Local Management Board Manager. And we're here today seeking approval to submit the FY24 Youth and Family Engagement Diversion application and accept the award. I'm going to have Ed explain this funding. This is really just a pass-through funding program for us that we then support this through our Carroll County Youth Service Bureau and the services they provide with partnership with Department of Juvenile Services.
Yeah, so essentially what this is, and this program's been in place for a number of years now. DJS has a need for behavioral health services that they can't meet internally, and they look to us to contract with CCYSB to provide case management services and other behavioral health services that are available through the continuum of care at CCYSB, and it's billed through the local management board and reimbursed through the state. Essentially, as Celine said, it's a pass-through grant. Serves only those youth and families that are involved with the criminal justice system. There's some cooperation between DJS and us in evaluating and looking at the program. So, but only folks involved in the DJS system are eligible for this program, and it's completely funded by DJS.
$0 county match.
$0 county match, that's correct.
I'll make a motion to approve the submission of the FY26 Youth and Family Engagement Diversion Application and accept the award.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thanks,
you,
Commissioners.
We now have a public hearing involving citizen service for the Community Development Block Grant. And Mr. Burke, do you have anything to tell us about the public hearing?
No, I don't believe this is the first time you're hearing about this. This is required by the federal government that you have several public hearings. With us today is Celine, as she introduced herself earlier, and Deb Standiford from our grants office to give you the highlights of what's being proposed today.
Okay, so we're here today to open a public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant COVID Round 3 funding. This funding exists and is available to local governments with neighborhood revitalization, housing opportunities, and economic development, and improving public facilities and services with projects to benefit low and moderate income persons. We had come before you to announce that we were going to be hosting the public hearing, and today we are here before you to seek public comment about these services. We are proposing, excuse me, we're proposing an application that includes 3 different projects. The first project would be with Westminster Rescue Mission. They're seeking staffing funding support, and then equipment for food distribution for a total of $283,809. Human Services Programs is looking to increase their rapid rehousing dollars. And then we also have Citizen Services looking to increase our rapid rehousing dollars for youth, and then also to have some additional funding for administrative fees for oversight of the program lines. That being said, we are seeking if we have any public comment on this grant application.
Any questions of staff?
And all of the numbers that you just read are on the next page,
Yeah, because this is the first motion about the public hearing and any public comment, and Debbie has some language we need to add.
To have into the record. I just want to mention that the public hearing was advertised on the 20th of March, and if anyone in the public wants to see the application, they can contact the Carroll County Grants Office here at 225 North Center Street. Call me, 410-386-2212, for a copy of the application.
Have you heard any feedback?
No.
And we have no cards here, and we have no one online for our public comment, correct?
No one online, sir.
I would note the advertising was done in the Carroll County Times on the 20th of March.
and we did discuss this a couple of weeks ago about where okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was thinking of the right thing. We talked about, because remember I had the question about the latest round of money from the pandemic and where it was coming from and how it was possible that any of that still existed, so.
Yeah, most of it was running through 26 as our funds. The last allocation is ARPA funding, the American Recovery and Rescue and Recovery Plan. So that last round, so this is that money. They're trying to allocate the last of their allocation, or obligate the last of their allocation.
So this is is it fair to say this is the final round of
the specific COVID, the CDBG COVID funding.
And so, I mean, I'll just ask, I guess, a direct question. So I noticed that some of the intention for some of the grant money would be for staff, food distribution, rehousing. When the grant is done, what happens to those services and staff members that are being employed and utilized under the grants?
Sure, and I can speak to the rapid rehousing pieces for both HSP and for ourselves. With the rapid rehousing funding, that is always time limited, right? It can be 6 months to 2 years that someone can be in a unit utilizing those funding, but essentially it's a stepping stone to get them into more permanent housing options. So the staff are already in those program lines working. As far as an administrative side for that, but as far as it will allow us to lease up additional units or have additional folks supported through that. As we're moving folks on, it just increases our bank of funding. And we do projections so that we know how far along we can get and how many more people we can pull into the program line with those funds.
So it's not like, for example, the grant, say, expires next year and all of a sudden you have to fire 3 or 4 people or something?
No, not at all. No, we're not going to be increasing staff in these lines at all for the rapid rehousing pieces. And I would ask that Stephanie, if you wanted to speak to the staff that you're hiring or the staff support that's going to go into
Okay,
this.
I was curious about that, yeah, thank you.
Sure. So this is not for new staffing, so
Okay.
we don't anticipate, we're not bringing on people who we would then let go. This is to support existing programming. Some of the equipment support is actually for a trailer that would provide for additional storage space.
So a one-time cost?
Exactly.
Okay.
Mhm.
And I think, tell me, Mr. Burke, if I'm wrong, we ought to go ahead and close the public hearing, and then we can go to the next agenda item and talk the grant itself in detail.
That's correct, yes.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, now we'll talk about the submittal and acceptance of award of the grant.
Okay, and so we are, as we noted within the hearing, we're looking to have your acceptance and authorization to submit this grant. And I stated a little bit about Citizen Services intentions and our look for rapid rehousing funding for homeless youth. And I did want to just take a minute while we're here to highlight some of the great things this program has accomplished since its inception in 2020. So far, in total, we've supported over 48 persons with this funding, 21 households, which included 30 adults and 18 children. And 92% of the people that were involved in this rapid rehousing program exited to positive housing destinations. And that's incredible, especially for the youth that we're serving. And we have a designated housing stability coordinator that works with these youth. I'm engaged with these youth. I meet them every day as they're working with our housing stability coordinator. And it's really an awesome program that we were able to keep elevating with this funding. So it's been great. We can do things and assist with furnishings for the youth through some of our funding from our LMB navigation grant funds, which includes the dresser, nightstands, futons, kitchen tables, microwaves, all of those things that somebody that is getting into a housing opportunity for the first time would not have. And would be relying on their own funding to purchase those, but as youth that are coming up often don't have those extra resources to furnish a new apartment. But they certainly can be much more successful. And then our housing stability follows them beyond just getting into the unit. They stay with them and continue to help them access other resources, services, and connections within the community. So, and I'll turn it to Stephanie to speak a little bit to the funding she's seeking with the Westminster Rescue Mission.
So for ours, this supports our food distribution program. We currently are moving more than 1 million pounds of food throughout the county, all parts of the county. And what we are experiencing right now is just, we're running out of space. And so this would be an additional trailer that could be refrigeration or freezing. The other piece, the generator, is the other important piece. So I would love to say that we never lose power, but unfortunately we lose power too often, and that's a big risk for us. And having to come up with creative solutions for food during those times is difficult. And so the generator will help us with that. And the staffing costs are for the staff that we currently have to support those.
And then also Scott Yard with HSP, if you want to step to the mic and share about the rapid rehousing funding that you're seeking.
Sure. Hi, good morning.
Morning.
HSP is the rapid rehousing provider for the adults for the Homeless Solutions Program. We receive roughly $150 to maybe $200,000 a year in rental rehousing dollars, and that includes case management and staff that we already have on board. What this is going to do is allow us to help an additional 5 to 10 individuals on top of the already 30 to 35 individuals or households that we support. And it kind of varies. The reason we say 5 to 10 because we have an eligibility list where people are chosen. The individuals that have the highest need get selected. It could be a family of 4, so the rent is going to be a lot higher, or it could be an individual where the rent's a lot lower. So it varies greatly depending on who is eligible at the top of the list based on the highest amount of need.
Thank you.
And then a $0 county match.
Correct.
So I want to talk about our senior centers for a moment. Does any of this money touch our senior centers in any way to assist them with their operations or what they're trying to accomplish on a daily basis?
The community development block grants do not touch our senior centers typically unless we're doing a project, a capital project, because a lot of the CDBG funding comes in that way to support a build out or a renovation. We could apply for some if it times up. But it does impact our seniors because some of the seniors may have access to these rapid rehousing dollars if they are homeless, and they may be coming to our senior centers for congregate meals every day. And this is another resource that if they are and we have had some of our seniors that attend the centers that have accessed rapid rehousing dollars to get into a unit.
I can just speak to the Mount Airy Senior Center and my own observations there, that there are certainly some things that need to be done, and there's projects that are on hold or not even, close to being funded. This is the final round, however. This is the last opportunity we have to apply any of these grants to improve our senior centers with grant money. Is that an accurate statement?
I can answer a piece of that, and Debbie can probably pull in also. This money was specifically targeted, this COVID round 3 funding was specifically targeted for homelessness and food resources. So this wouldn't have been available for capital projects. We will have access to additional community development block grant fundings. They have 2 seasons of awards per year, 1 season in the spring. I was thinking it was 2. Maybe I was getting excited because this was the other one during COVID years. But one season every year in the spring that we can apply for CDBG, and that will continue as far as we know at this time.
Okay. I'd like to see the staff focus on that, because I don't think Mount Airy Senior Center is probably the only senior center in the county that could use some help. So that to me seems like a really good focus for future grants.
Yeah, and I think
Commissioner
there's a
Garrett.
couple, and we can certainly, and senior centers are eligible. Seniors are considered eligible under CDBG, as presumed low and moderate income. I think the challenge for a county project, it has to be shovel-ready. We have to have design and engineering done and cost estimates in hand, and we have to have match. It can't be their last funder in. So it would need to be part of the CIP. That design and engineering would need to be complete, and we would need to be ready to move on that project. We have a very time-limited, we don't have much time once we're awarded to get the work done.
Sure. Okay.
So those have been our challenges, and we also have access to state dollars for senior center improvements, but I just don't think that that's been, we haven't applied for any of that money for senior center capital projects for a few years, before COVID.
Town, right.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner Guerin, thank you for bringing that up, because every year, I raise the issue of Tawnytown, and if there is a focus that we can reorient ourselves to try to get some more money for our senior centers, I'm certainly in favor of that.
Sure, and I'd like to just talk a little bit about this process from the Aging and Disability, and Gina and her team and I, we meet and we talk about these projects at our senior centers, because there are many different pieces. Mount Airy is one, Tawnytown is another, Westminster and their dining room. We've put in over the years for different types of projects during the budget process. We put in a few different capital requests this year, but they typically don't make it into the recommended based on other priorities or the funding for the budget season. So we do submit, not just to get them into the capital streamlined, so that we could look at funding options like CDBG and also the state grant, the senior center state grants.
Okay.
There is one round of capital funding that's open to non-entitled jurisdictions like Carroll, so we compete with everybody else in the state for these CDBG dollars. It's a competitive round. We can apply for up to $800,000. And I will say, the round is not open yet this spring. It's a little late in opening. I'm sure they were waiting for the federal budget to pass so that they would know what their allocations were. We do have 2 nonprofits that have also asked us to support CDBG projects. One would support seniors. Springboard has 8 apartments at West End Place for seniors, and they would like to do a rehab of those. So we have a couple of nonprofits that have approached us, so we'll have to evaluate whether we would be ready for any internal projects before accepting one of those.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to see a sort of a renewed focus on that. And I was going to speak with you offline, but obviously what's on my mind is the COLE, the Council on Aging and Livability in Mount Airy, and they identified a couple capital projects in the senior center. So I was going to ask you to take another look at those, and maybe we can go to the next step with trying whatever the process is to try to identify costs and which ones make the most sense to move forward, whether it's trying to get them into the capital budget or applying grant funding for those. So now I don't have to run out and bug you in the hallway after this.
Sure.
So.
And I appreciate that. And the COLE is an awesome support, and they're very involved and engaged. It's their Coalition on Aging and Livability, which is part of the town of Mount Airy, just so everybody knows what that stands for. And they're very engaged with us and at our senior center and with our leadership team with the Bureau of Aging and Disabilities. So.
Thank you.
And just one other historical note for this is that we did fund through one of the COVID rounds of CDBG a position at the Bureau of Aging and Disabilities where we had a homeless case management staff member that was specific to older adults, and that connectivity with the shelter to really assess folks and get them moving into benefits and other resources that were available to them to help them go into housing rather than remaining in shelter. So that was an essential position. When the funding ended, though, we had the ability to move that person into a full-time position that had been vacated due to retirement. So that worked perfectly for us.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Now we want to talk about AgPres and a specific Randy and Susan Bechtel property. Morning.
We just moving a little quicker than you're used to,
We
probably.
just announced you.
For the end of one, and then
Yeah.
I thought they had one more
There's
thing
a
to do.
delay out there.
Good morning to both of
Jam out
you.
in the hallway.
There are quite a few people out there. All right. Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Glad we made it in here on time. We appreciate the time before you today. We're coming to ask for final approval of a county program property that is going to add to the 80,637 acres that we already do have. This is the Randy Bechtel and Susan A. Bechtel property. We do have Mr. Bechtel in the audience today, so really glad to have him here. This farm is located on 1439 Old Tawnytown Road in Westminster. It's a 60.02 acre farm. We are not retiring any lot rights. This is a remainder property. We are protecting it against commercial uses and any zoning changes. The fair market value of the land only is $165,675.89 per county points-based appraisal. The cost to the county will be $115,973.12, which equates to $1,932.24 per acre. which is 70% of the fair market value. This is how the farm sits in relation to other ag easement properties in the area, right in between Tonytown Pike and Uniontown Road.
Are those lots of opportunities surrounding it?
We do have several opportunities in that area, yes, sir.
What's the one to the southeast, a very large parcel?
Right next to
Yeah.
the development, that's an old horse farm
Wow.
there. It's currently for sale.
Is it?
Yes, sir. Are you interested in a horse farm? You have a few race horses we didn't know about?
Used to know. Off the track.
It's a nice little area. My farm's in this area too.
Awesome.
Here's some of the cattle handling facilities the Bechtels have at their place. They have a Hereford farm, a lot of good show animals, very prominent in Carroll County and, sometimes throughout the country, depending on where they're showing.
Beautiful property.
It is a beautiful property. So once again, we're here for final approval of the Randy L. Bechtel and Susan A. Bechtel property located at 1439 Old Tawnytown Road in Westminster, 60.02 acres, with a fair market value of the land being $165,675.89 per county points-based appraisal at a cost to the county of $115,973.12.
I'll make a motion to exercise an option to purchase an easement on the Randy L. Bechtel and Susan A. Bechtel property in the amount of $115,973.12.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate it.
Now we want to have a discussion and possible decision on development allowances for residential development, chapters 155 and 156. Morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. How are you today?
Good.
How are you doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
Lauren, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
I wondered
Is that
who
like
was
an
going to make
afterthought?
sure she couldn't stay quiet.
Oh, no, because Kenny said, "How are you?" to Chris. I wanted to make sure someone got Laura. You know.
I appreciate it.
That was like an
I
afterthought.
just came to be quiet and smile, please.
No, Lauren, I care. So, I'm not sure about this, but yeah.
So we're here this morning for potentially the final discussion on this proposed legislative change. So just a quick summary of the recommendations that we've been discussing over the past couple months. So we're talking about three separate sections of county code. 155.032 D10, which relates to a limitation on recordation of lots in a subdivision. Currently, the code limits 25 lot recordations per year, and the recommendation all along has been to remove that section of code. The next section is 156.04B, which is basically a tool that allows the Board of County Commissioners to impose building caps if we have significant development. And because there's no immediate effective implication to that, that is basically giving you the power to do something, but it doesn't require you to do anything, we felt it appropriate to just leave that as is. And then the last change is 156.04E, which is building permit limits. And the recommendation has been to increase that from 25 to 50 per year in subdivisions, which seems to be in line with our discussions with the development community. Increase from 50 to 100 building permits per year for multifamily. And then to expand the waiver process to include those single-family subdivisions, to put in, to allow a waiver process that's relatively simple to go through. It's essentially a waiver to our department and with good reason for a waiver. So that is essentially all I have. We are here to answer any questions. I did provide a final slide. The only code change where we're rewriting the code is 156.04E. And so on the left is the existing code and on the right is the proposed if we need it for reference.
This was staffed through the Planning Commission.
Yes.
Anything come up that, needs to be highlighted or no?
No, and we did have community involvement. We had several developers and some of the land use attorneys testify both to Planning Commission and I believe I can say that everybody was in support of these changes. We certainly did not hear any opposition to them.
And that included members of the community, or who, I guess, who falls under the term community for you?
So in this case, it was the development community, so it was developers and land use attorneys primarily who spoke.
And did we hear from any citizens, nobody?
No, I don't believe so. And since the public hearing 2 weeks ago, I am not aware of any further comments or related to this.
I mean, it doesn't take away requirements that have to be met for development. You know, you can't, the adequate public facilities are still in place.
Yes.
So just because you can do something on one side, if you don't have the abilities, you know, whether it be schools or infrastructure, you're not going to do it.
Correct.
But this helps financing for development. It helps for long-term planning for both development and for us, you know, in a bigger way as opposed to 25s at a time, so.
Yes. Yeah, and what we heard was that it improves certainty for the
that's
development
right.
community. Yes.
Right.
I move the Board of Commissioners approve the proposed amendments to Chapter 155 and 156 of the County Code.
Before a second, we need to approve or deny, correct?
Need to what?
So the board obviously has the option of either approving this or denying it. So
you need to pick one of the words.
I said approve.
You said approve,
Yes.
okay. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion?
So, I'm sorry, please, go ahead.
Go
No,
ahead.
please.
No, please.
So, the two questions I had. So I know the limit at present is 25, and I know that was instituted to help curtail some massive unchecked growth. What was the limit prior to 25?
I don't believe there was one. We would have to go back probably to.
1965.
Well, so the APFOs were first discussed in 1991, and then in 1998, our APFO code was put in place. So we'd have to go back that far to, and I don't know off the top of my head.
Okay. And I know a while back we had decided to institute the potential for DARA agreements. And would something like a DARA work into this in some way, shape, or form? Especially if it's like a multi-year project or something.
Sure.
I mean, I guess if a developer was interested. So, I mean,
Yes,
obviously we
yeah.
can't force it on someone.
Right. So the DARAs are primarily related to the development process. So what kind of codes are in place and so on. An agreement between the county and the developer that each will do certain things so there's certainty through the project. The code as related here to building permits, I'd have to think about whether that would apply, but certainly the DARA could speak to this. And because there's an allowance for a waiver, I'm playing lawyer here.
Right.
That's a dangerous thing.
Yes.
You're in between
Yes.
two lawyers.
And so and you got where I was kind of going with this.
Yeah.
So if we have DARs in place, which would allow us to create that waiver, okay, instead of 25, we'll give you 50 houses. Is the change in this code necessary, given that we already have the flexibility to increase the number of?
So I guess what I would submit is that the DARAs would only apply to certain projects and very limited on those. These regulations, these codes apply to all projects. So it's very possible for a development project to come through the process where they're just following the regular rules and the developer doesn't feel the need to have a DARA, and then would just adhere to these rules.
Yeah. I think the DARA, is going to be used more as an exception to activities. You know, it's not gonna be like we're gonna have 10 of them in place at any given time. We may have one or two, whereas this, you know, it's gonna be part of the rules process for developers, but it's still, this doesn't, and that my big issue was that this does not conflict with the public facilities, because that still is the, you know, is the check that has to be made,
Yes.
so.
I certainly take that point. I mean, I guess and I don't want to trample over Commissioner Guerin's time, but I mean, for me anyways, I'm almost thinking that, you know, if a developer is that interested in building X number of houses, they would have the developer rights and responsibilities agreement that they could enter into. And that's just me, but
Yeah.
I certainly understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I just think that the DRAs are, I want to say if we don't have to put one in place, then don't put one in place. You know, it's just more levels of bureaucracy. You know, I've said often, and to my good lawyers, to my right and left, but especially the one in the back, I want to put them out of business. I want to make it less, you know, lawyer engagement and more codified in ordinances and laws on what we can and cannot do. That's my perspective, to be more black and white, and that's what I think this does, so.
That's a fair perspective to take.
I appreciate that.
And this applies to recordation and building permits.
So what's on the screen right now is specific to the building permits. The code that we're proposing to remove relates to the recordation.
Yes, yes.
So the motion that you're discussing is to do both.
Primarily building permits.
Yes, yeah.
So I think some of my colleagues mentioned the adequate public facilities ordinances, APFO. And I certainly hope this board doesn't make any attempts or motions or moves to water that down, because I think it's obviously very important. But in terms of this permit release, doubling, essentially going up 100%, you know, the Freedom area is sort of an acute example of how the decisions we make here affect certain neighborhoods and things like that. Is it fair to say that the people that live in that area can expect a 100% increase in development going forward because of this?
No. And so this is only related to how many permits can be pulled at a certain time. So this is not giving developers any additional permits.
Right.
So,
Any additional ability
lots.
to build lots, right?
Yes.
So it does give
I'm
them more
sorry. Yes.
permits.
I'm sorry. So for example, if you are doing a 100 lot subdivision, current county code would be that you could only pull 25 of those building permits per year. So it would take you 4 years to get through that. What we're proposing is to change that to 50 per year. So now it would only take you 2 years, but you're not getting additional lots. It's just, it's supporting the
I
rate.
understand that. I meant
Yeah.
in terms of the rate
Okay.
of development.
On
I
a-
think the answer is yes.
On a particular subdivision, yes. Now, what we've heard from some citizens, a concern is that the disruption to their neighborhood related to construction activities and so on. So this would actually be beneficial there, because the developer will get in, construct, and be finished potentially quicker than if it was dragged out over 4 years.
And
Some might agree with you.
And we currently have some housing issues. And the one way I look at this, they're still only going to build them as quickly as they can sell them.
Yes.
That's the market will control this more than this rule. And some developers would do some timing to get lots slightly more quicker.
And that was some of the feedback that when we talked to the development community is what is a typical rate for building in a subdivision? And the answer was 3 to 4 houses a month, so that 36 to 48 houses. So that's where we felt it appropriate to not hold them back, and that increase from 25 to 50 would allow them to meet what we're understanding is a typical rate.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No, just because, again, I feel that the DARA would help us in this instance. I don't, disagree necessarily with increases of the numbers or anything. It's just I feel that the DARA is a bet for me anyways. I think a DARA is a better path to try to contend with it. But I certainly understand where my friends are up here,
Yes.
so.
Yeah. Okay, 3-2. Thank
Right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Piney Run Dam design funding.
Yes, so I will stay here for that. So I'm here today basically looking for concurrence from the board to submit a letter to the Natural Resources Conservation Service indicating the county's interest in obtaining funding from them for upgrades to the Piney Run Dam. So I'll run through, I've got a simple slide here, and you'll understand why in just a minute why I'm keeping this brief. So essentially, the Maryland Department of Environment is the regulatory authority over dams in the state. And I believe it was 2018 or 2019 that MDE expressed concerns about Piney Run Dam, that from a functional perspective, that there may be some issues. What I want everybody who's listening and to understand is that this is not a critical issue, that there's a danger at the dam or anything like that. The dam is in excellent condition. It's very well maintained, and every year, county staff as well as staff from MDE inspect the dam, and we've gotten very high ratings every year that we inspect it. So this is not a imminent danger sort of situation. I don't want to sensationalize this. But MDE did raise some concerns, and they essentially gave us, they directed us that we had to analyze the dam to determine if their concerns had merit. And if there were concerns, were issues that needed to be addressed, we had to mitigate those by the end of 2027. So back about 5 years ago, we applied for grant funding with NRCS to perform the first phase of work, which is the analysis of the dam. And that's, like I said, that's taken about 5 years. And we are at the very end of that phase. One of the last boxes we have to check is a public hearing, which is scheduled for next Thursday. So I'll be back before you next Thursday and give a whole presentation on the results of that and so on. The next phase will be the engineering and permitting. And just last week, we received an email from NRCS saying that if we want to be considered for grant funding for the next phase, we need to submit a letter by April 1st, which is next Tuesday, basically indicating that we're interested in participating in that program. Now, that letter doesn't have any financial information and so on. It's basically just saying, yes, the county is going to apply for this grant funding. So that's why I'm here with you today, is to just get concurrence that I can send that letter to NRCS saying, yes, we're interested in funding and so on. And then I'll be back here next Thursday to give you all of the information and to hear from the public if there's anything that they want to testify about the work that's proposed out there. As I said, the letter has no financial information in it. There's no commitment. When we get to the point where we're going to apply for the grant, and that's where the financial information, I will be back before you again then for concurrence on the actual grant application. So I'm just looking for approval to submit the letter at this point. I did throw in here the rough estimates of what we're looking at for the design and permitting. The rough estimate is about $1.8 million for design and permitting, and we anticipate that we can request $1 million from NRCS when we get to that point. When we get to phase 3, the actual construction, which at the earliest I'm thinking is going to be FY28, we can go to NRCS again and request more money to assist us with the construction, but that would be a separate application. So at this point, I'm just looking for a concurrence to submit the letter to NRCS that we're interested in grant funding.
Just one quick, I guess, somewhat related question. You and I went wandering around the woods, last year, the year before?
Yes.
And the Maryland State Archaeological Society or whatever was doing research on that one farm back there, what was a farm.
Yes.
And I know at the time that they said they had to take some things back to look at them. I don't remember, did they ever get back in touch with us about what they were analyzing or what they were?
Yes, so that was...
Washington slept there.
How was that?
That was one of the reasons why this has taken 5 years is the Maryland Historic Trust and the was concerned that there may be something of significance in those ruins. And so we had to do a phase 2 level archaeology study of those ruins, which we applied for additional funding from NRCS, and NRCS covered the cost of that. The study was done, and basically the results were there was nothing of significance there. It's an old homestead, but nothing culturally significant that warranted preservation.
I guess just George Washington's son slept there,
There
wasn't
you
it?
go.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve submission of a letter to NRCS expressing the county's interest in obtaining grant funding for Piney Run Dam.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Didn't the board during a previous session, maybe a year ago, allocate funding for the Piney Run Dam already? So what's the disposition of those funds if you need 1.8, but you're gonna maybe get 1 million? I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, so I believe what you're recalling is when I was here before to request the additional funds for that archaeology study. And again, those were 100% covered by NRCS. There was no county funds that went
I
towards
thought we
that.
had set aside money for the dam itself.
So I believe there is in the CIP, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, money set aside for the repairs to the dam, which we anticipate to be 10, 11 million?
Construction, about 9 million.
9 million.
Yes.
And there is some money set aside in future years for the dam construction. Our hope has always been to get, use other people's money as much as possible. But hope, I hear, is not a course of action.
We made this decision,
So the money is set aside.
I think we made this decision around 2019, 2020.
It's been a while.
Somewhere in that time frame, whether Piney Run was going to revert back to a
You've kept it,
reservoir,
And you've modified it.
or
Yes.
it was going to stay as is, and we're gonna focus our attention on the dam. And we
Well,
decided.
that was sort of a precursor to.
Right, and then we determined that we were gonna focus our attention on the dam and get AECom and others engaged and come up with pricing. But that's the capital projects that I remember.
Yes. So during this watershed study, one of the decisions that needed to be made was which direction the county wanted to move as far as the different alternatives that were presented. One alternative was to move towards reestablishing the reservoir for drinking water, which would have a much higher cost. But since we were doing something anyways there, whether we wanted to go down that path. And the board at the time made the determination not to pursue that option and simply look at the the maintenance of the dam that is required to meet MDE's requirements.
Look, it's sort of like magic.
Yep.
So to Commissioner Guerin's question, we do have a capital project already set up toward the Piney Run Dam. There's $3.2 million in it right now. We have $700,000 included in the recommended budget, if that happens, and it's a total of 3.9. So our share of this would come out of that money, and the rest is toward the eventual construction. And this is a place where I've mentioned several times, I think it's likely that we will end up needing more than we have available. Some of that revolves around what Chris said, though. We'll be applying for money, but we don't know what we're going to get.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and.
Any further discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Camera
Chris.
replacements.
Thanks, Chris.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
It's hard to keep track.
That's all right. Can't believe I actually remembered that.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Commissioners.
The Office of Procurement, in cooperation with the Department of Technology Services, requests your approval to purchase replacement cameras from Skyline Technology Solutions in the amount of $111,065.02. This purchase is being made via term contract that was awarded to Skyline Technology Solutions that was competitively bid. The amount is approved in the FY25 budget.
Questions?
Motion to approve, I'm sorry, Ed,
No, I mean, you're just saying questions. You don't want to have a description of anything?
Oh, it's just the cameras that the county has, some of them are being replaced. We do them about every 5 to 7 years, just like we do with other technology.
On a rolling basis.
Rolling
right?
basis.
As the manufacturer ceases in support on the current
So,
device.
and there are, not replacing them like anything else, there could be cybersecurity issues, that type of thing that people could get into if the software, hardware, firmware is not up to date, so.
Motion to approve the purchase of replacement cameras from Skyline Technology Solutions in the amount of $111,065.02.
Second.
So I have a motion and a second. Any further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, workforce development.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
How are you today?
Good.
The Office of Procurement and the Department of Workforce Development were before the board in 2024 and received approval to award a contract to Transfer Incorporated to provide classroom to career pathways, training workers for well-paying jobs across every industry via hands-on simulated training that teaches critical skills for in-demand jobs in the amount of $54,687.50. Since that time, a change order has been requested in the total amount of $29,687.50, which exceeds the 10% of the original contract, and per resolution delegation of authority requests the board approve to spend these additional funds. The amount is approved in the FY25 budget.
Good morning, Commissioners. Heather Powell, Carroll County Workforce Development. This is an extension of our contract. Two things came up. We use Transfer VR Oculus headsets to do career exploration and also career pathways for high school students. It's been very successful, and two things have come up. We had carryover money for our first year in Blueprint, which we are allowed to spend through the remainder of this year. The carryover came from receiving the money in July and then trying to onboard the staff over the course of the first quarter. So this is well within our budget. The other thing that's exciting that's happened is our navigators work with all the middle schools and all the high schools, and they now have office hours in every high school 4 days a week, as well as the middle schools. So we're supporting the career coordinators in the high schools, and we're working with students who might not be career and college ready by 10th grade, which is one of the points in Blueprint, so that they can go on to work in dual enrollment or take CTE courses, and it's just part of the educational system. So we're working directly with students who may not be there or might not have made choices about what they want to do, because ultimately the goal of education is to prepare kids for careers. And that's why we're excited about this work. It's really blending college education, the community college, its public workforce system, and the school system to look at the workforce needs of these students and where they're going to go in the future. So this would allow us to have another pack of the Oculuses. So each of our two navigators would have those to travel with them. They wouldn't have to be scheduling. So when students come, they will have them on hand for their office hours, and it just makes the work easier for everybody, I think, and the opportunities expanded.
Do you have a way to track the success of programs like this with these kids? Like, is there a partnership with CCPS that, you know, you're watching these kids move on from middle school, you know, through high school, and saying, hey, we're seeing, you know, these capabilities really lending themselves towards this success?
Yes. So some of the platforms that we're using, we can track all the information that is when students use the time here. Our Pathful platform, which we're using in the middle schools, which is exploration and awareness, the time students spend there with their middle school coaches, we're tracking that. This is definitely building the plane while we're flying it. The work that we're doing in year 2 has expanded to the high schools now. We wanted to follow a continuum of students starting in sixth grade last year, so we can follow them through graduation. We thought that was the best way to start, but we're also on the backside capturing students that might not be graduating with any idea of what they want to do, whether it's career planning or even job placement. The other piece of this that Blueprint really didn't talk about, that the work we're doing in Carroll County is including school counselors. That's a big part. So you're readying students in middle school to have an idea of what their high school curriculum is going to look like. It's really big to have that ready in ninth grade. People that are responsible for that are the school counselors. So right now, our team is meeting out at Hashua. It's the middle school career counselors, high school career coordinators, and school counselors. So that conversation's happening, and that's really improved the flow of communication between the agencies.
I'll make a motion to approve the additional cost of transfer incorporated in the amount of $29,687.50.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you. I would just like to add, if anybody would like to, and this is to you all, to the public, we have a set of Oculuses that we keep at the Workforce Center, and we offer classes on Mondays, so you can come over, try them out, and I would encourage everybody to try that.
Do you have a program so you can be the county attorney?
They haven't built that one yet,
It's more of a comic strip.
so thank you for your time.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you both.
Lastly, overview of permit and inspection fees, and this is information with no planned action, but
Morning, Commissioners.
teach us.
Morning, gentlemen.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
I didn't recognize you with the tie on.
First, if I could just quickly recognize Mike and his team. He doesn't get up here very often, so just want to mention the job that he does in his team, being proactive in identifying things for contractors that could be some issues for them and getting that information to them early, and also being reactive to them when they come into the office or call him with concerns and stuff like that. Him and his staff do an exceptional job at providing a high level of customer service, so I think it's important that we identify that today. I'm here to provide a brief overview of our current permit and inspections fee schedule. Just a quick background. The current fee schedules have been in place since July of 2020. At that time, the Building Code Steering Committee and the Plumbing and Electrical Boards evaluated the fee schedules and made recommendations to them prior to its adoption by the Board of County Commissioners. Over the last 3 fiscal years, the Bureau has recovered an average of 60% of its operational costs from these fees. Fees charged are fees from building, plumbing, electrical, and fire permits, fees from contractor licensing and registration, and impact fees. Fees cover operational costs associated with processing the permits and the administrative side of things that come with that, plan reviews, and field inspections. Fees are collected and deposited into the general fund. Towns do receive 10% of building permit fees collected on projects within their corporate limits through our town-county agreements. In addition to our fees, the towns do also charge a fee for each building permit, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. And the state also requires us to collect a $50 fee for the Home Builder Guarantee Fund on each new residence, which gets transferred directly to the state. This first slide is a copy of our building permit fee schedule. We have residential fees, commercial fees, and miscellaneous fees. This second fee slide is our electrical and plumbing permit fees. They are configured in the same manner with having residential, commercial, and miscellaneous. We have a fee schedule for our fire permits. It should be noted that this process was taken over in 2016. The state previously performed this function. At that time, we were having, the state was having some issues with staffing and causing us some service issues. So it was decided by the Board of County Commissioners to take over this responsibility from the state. It has benefited our contracting and business community, ensuring, swift action when we need it, and we can direct staff where there's needs there for those two portions. We also charge impact fees. Impact fees only apply to new dwelling units. They're used to offset impacts of new development on schools and parks. And currently, there are no impact fees for commercial development. This slide shows a copy of what we've remitted as part of the 10% to the towns over the last 5 fiscal years. As you can see, that goes up and down and fluctuates depending on the amount of construction activity within the specific municipality. This is a copy of the town fees and what they charge. The percentages shown on this particular slide are related to our permit fee. So, for example, a 50% charge would be 50% of what we charge. So if we charged 100, they would charge 50. They're all, some of the towns also have a flat fee, as shown on the slide. With that, are there any questions?
So I guess is the recommendation, or are you coming before us today for a recommendation about whether to raise the fees, keep them the same, or?
This is simply just a presentation, so
Okay.
you're aware of what we are charging, how much we kind of collecting against our expenses, and it's really a kind of decision up to the board whether they want us to take any further action with it.
Overall, you said you recover 60%.
On average.
Correct.
On average, yeah. So are there a couple of areas within the fee structure that it would bring it up to 75% or,
Yeah, there are specific
a
areas.
higher comfort level?
Yeah.
60% is pretty, gratuitous, I mean, we're working a lot, and if we're only recovering 60%, then what can bring it up without breaking the back of those doing the development?
Yeah, there are some areas, more specifically maybe residential, that when we went through the process with the code steering committee, and I'll use the smaller project aspect of a deck, we charge $60 for a deck, which is
Right.
cheap for the amount of services that we provide. I guess the conversations that took place back then were ensuring that we didn't make it too cost prohibitive, that maybe people didn't come in and get the permits.
Right.
So it was a decision at that time that the
Right.
code committee decided to keep that particular item lower.
Yeah.
But again, these fees haven't been raised or discussed since 2020, for
years.
5 years.
Yeah, I mean, because I see that too. I'm like, okay, where's that, don't make it too difficult or too
Onerous?
challenge, well, not even that, just challenging for someone to blow off the process and take the risk and say, no, screw it, I'm not gonna go through the process, I'm just gonna build it, and nobody's gonna say anything different,
Yeah, I will say we do get comments frequently from contractors mentioning that the cost of these fees are lower than other jurisdictions and things like that. So just so you're aware of that as well.
Yeah, I think, I was advocating us taking a look at this, and I think several other of my colleagues were interested as well. And to your point, when I talk to people within the county, it's clear to them as well that your number one goal is compliance. You just want to make sure things are safe. You're not out trying to fleece anybody. I think it is good that we're taking a look at these. And I think what you don't capture in the slides, which is not a dig on you at all, is the administrative costs and the time costs that some of these things entail. Sort of those intangibles where your staff are having to do things that, if they didn't have to do them, they could be doing something else. Anybody who's ever walked into your space will see how absolutely busy it is. I mean, there's just people flying around everywhere. You've got people coming in who know what they're doing, and then people coming in who have no idea what they're doing. Paper everywhere, although it looks organized, it's just a lot of plans everywhere. So anything that we can do to help with those efficiencies as well is something that I'm interested in, whether it's, significant, recap of cost for the county or not. That's sort of some of the things that I'm interested as well, and I hope we consider going forward as far as the board goes.
Ted, did you want to add?
Yeah, back on Commissioner Rothstein's question. There's always this time lag between me hearing something and walking down here. I'm not sure what happens in between, but I just wanted to touch briefly on that how much of our costs are recovering. With any fee we charge, there's always this basic question: how much of the cost do we want to cover by the people we're charging for it, and how much do we want to cover by general taxpayers? And there's no right or wrong answer to this, but I believe we should always be consciously thinking about that choice. And if you say, well, we want the people who are benefiting from this service to pay for it, then we would be attempting to get to 100%, whatever that works out to be. Other end, you could say, we don't want this to be about anybody in particular paying for it. We just want the taxpayer to pay for it like any other service. Then we wouldn't charge any fees. And we could be anywhere in between, and that's totally your choice. And we can always change. But now, if you wanted to look at it, the starting point would be for you to give direction saying, our intent is to recover X percent of the cost.
And I have with it, with the state more than us, all this talk about affordable housing, and then we make it more expensive to just get ready to build a house, much less build it. And that's MDE and some of the fees the state charges, not us. Do you guys think we should look at this deeper, or you're pretty comfortable that we're at the right point to get people to do it? And
I don't really have an opinion other than I agree with Ted. There's downfalls to raising there, but then yet, are we in the ballpark comparable to other jurisdictions? I don't know. I mean, they're all over the place too, to be honest with you.
For permits and inspections, as long as they know that they have the money to hire the people and buy the paper,
Yes.
they're
good.
happy.
It is much more a philosophical question for the
Yes.
board.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should stay within the fees approach, definitely, not the taxing approach. If somebody wants to build or develop or change, innovate, whatever, in their property, then they should have the responsibility to pay for the appropriate fees to get it done. I think, 5 years is not a very long time that things have stayed status quo, but it is getting to a point where, times change, just like we look at water and sewer. Those that are having the ability to take advantage of our water and sewer, we increase fees to ensure we maintain the best quality of water and sewer. Now this is not, it's the same, but not the same, because you can't say no to water and sewer. I mean,
Yeah.
this is more, could be a luxury of doing something, but, no, I think we should, take a look at, the fees. I'd be interested where to make the appropriate adjustments from your perspective that would get us closer to 100% recovery. Right now this is good information, but I'm a blank slate when it comes to growing anything or.
And I understand what you're saying, but I think we got to look at the service we provide for the residents too. Our plan review doesn't recover 100%. EMS certainly doesn't recover 100%. The landfill doesn't recover 100%. And sewer water is an enterprise fund, so that's a little bit different.
Right.
Maybe, maybe not, because the landfill is too, but yeah, so I go back and forth on, and I look at, more than anything, it's, is somebody putting in an above-ground pool willing to pay for the electric permit and the permit, or they're just gonna do it and see if you catch them? You know, and I think that's a dilemma too. If you make, if you up that to $100, there's gonna be less people do it.
Right.
You know, so, you know, when, it's a tough, back and forth. So,
When was the last time we changed our impact fees on residential?
Oh, last summer.
Was that what it was, last summer?
Remember, you didn't, for years, didn't have a school impact fee. You had a park impact fee, and then you
Okay.
added a school impact fee last summer.
Okay.
And there, I would say the permits office just collects it. They dictated, this was not, there was a committee that was put together of, you know, knowledgeable folks in the industry that, you know, reviewed the fees, reviewed the work, and came up with a recommendation to the board. And if the board really wants to do that, I would recommend that again. That we, you know, it takes several months, put a committee together of the right people, you know, that are knowledgeable in the industry, and then come back with a recommendation. This is, you know, this is this is not a quick process.
so what's the consensus? Review it or not?
I think, I mean, we're at a point where it would be valuable to make a appropriate review. I mean, if we're only, you know, again, recovering 60% of cost, I mean, that's, you know, we're not a charity, you know, but there's got to be a balance. And so, yeah, that would be my suggestion.
What do you think?
And I'm in agreement. I mean, you know, maybe there are some fees that we could raise a little bit, and maybe some we leave the same. But I certainly would like the information from a study committee about it to determine whether or not, I mean, even keeping with comparisons with other counties, right? How we're doing, because we certainly, for example, want to attract businesses here. And you know, as Commissioner Rothstein said a little while ago, we don't want to make it too unappealing to you know, to them so that they don't do it. But so I'm certainly open to hearing if there are any potential changes we could make.
I think we review it. I don't think there's any harm in that.
I'm fine with the review. I think there's a lot of good information in here. I think we probably can come to some conclusions if we want to do that, and we are in budget process, so I think if anything's fair game. But in terms of the fees themselves and trying to adjust them, sure.
So what information do we want from them? They've kind of said what they recover. I think we're gonna find other counties are all over the place. But do you want that information?
Maybe our neighboring counties for sure. I'd be
Comparisons-
interested in.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Comparisons are frequently not very valuable
Right.
because everyone does it differently.
Right.
This may be a little bit easier to compare, but than other things. But you know, just because one county charges $100 for something and we charge $75 doesn't mean it makes sense for us to charge $100.
Well, right, we would have to evaluate them on a case-by-case
Right.
basis. For example, like you know, something out here might, you know, cost less because it's more rural, and in a more urban environment, it would, you know, so I'd totally
Vice
take that
versa,
point,
yeah. So you know, any direction that the board wants to give for the committee to, you know, if you're interested in maybe higher cost recovery, you know, maybe a target of 70% or something, you know, you're not going to get, you know, anywhere close to 100%, I'm sure. You know, might be something, you know, that you want to have the committee look at and figure out a way to get there. If there are any particular kinds of fees you want them to look at more so than others, you know, electrical fees more so than building fees or plumbing fees or something, you know, I don't know. But any direction, you know, is always helpful.
Yeah, I don't think we have, or at least I know I don't have that skill set to go that in depth. What I would say is, say we do target a 75%, recovery rate. And we look at all the things you just shared. Where are the priorities and of fees that we're really just lagging, where, your recovery is really only 30% of the man hours and the work you're doing on the permit?
We wouldn't be able to do it
Why not?
fee by fee like that. Trying to divide up the work of people into the different fees would be a huge amount of work, more than I think we could justify. We have to look at this.
Start with that. I hate to spend, if you guys spend too much time doing this, we might only recover 50%.
Yeah.
Right, there's that too.
But if you would get that information, I think that'll tell us something. You guys think?
Yeah, that's what I agree. I mean, a review, that's why I thought a review would make sense. The idea of a commission or something, I'm not sure that's necessary. Again, my biggest concern, I mean, and I think I speak for the other four, I mean, we're not trying to find ways to make more money here, but it's obvious since 2020, the cost of doing business for the Bureau of Permits and Inspection has gone up. I mean, we have to, and I know we can't take that money and direct it in certain places. I know we have rules regarding that, but I mean, why not look at it from that aspect? It just costs more money to do things. And if our fees aren't keeping up, or if we're returning fees that we shouldn't, because simply it's more work than it's getting, than the money that we get in return, then why not look at that? And that to me seems like a review. And maybe putting 75% on it makes sense. I mean, I think it probably does. Instead of trying to get, you're never going to get 100%. It's the 80% solution model that runs the whole world, right? So, I mean, why not 75% or 80%? And if we can maybe, is there an agreement to maybe direct the Bureau to just take a look at that? And like you said, there's opportunity costs, so we don't want to.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to have them just doing
And
this.
75 is a 25% increase. It's pretty heavy. Can you tell us, or you guys tell us, back in 20, when these new rates went in, what were we recovering then? Was it better than 60, or
I think it was slightly above.
slightly above? Because volume affects it.
And that's the challenge. You know, one year we might be at 45%, and next year we might be at 75 or 80%. So it
Yes.
fluctuates depending on the activity. So it's hard to pinpoint and know we're exactly going to hit that mark. So
Didn't
that's
we also add fees, permanent fees in 2020? We made adjustments.
we made adjustments to the fee schedule. Yes.
I thought there was
Might have been
some,
when we added the fire fees. I don't remember.
I thought we added some of the activities, the
We
fees.
did, with the Code Steering Committee suggestions, we did increase some of the penalties for doing work without permits and missed inspections and things like that.
Right. Okay.
You must be pretty old if you were here then.
Well, I just don't want to make this too difficult, like Ted sharing, but I think, your suggestion, although I have to give you credit for it, in finding out what other jurisdictions, I mean, that may be the
Yeah.
first step.
Yeah, I think that's a good start.
We can start with providing that information and then come back and have a conversation about those. Yeah.
And like Commissioner Guerin said, this is already a bunch of good information.
Yeah, I think they've done they've done the
Yeah,
homework.
so thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. You'll probably be back, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any public comment on the phone?
Well, we have someone here.
Yes.
Do you want to do that first?
Well,
Yeah, that's fine to do that. I was just curious if we also had it on the phone.
I do have one on the phone.
So he has one, so go ahead here and then have them ready.
Okay. Lisa Maizano? You can, yeah.
Okay, yes, I'm a little shorter. Okay. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Lisa Masano, and I'm a member of the Carroll Education Coalition. About a month and a half ago, the coalition started at my kitchen table with several other parents out of concern for the budget and staffing crises affecting our schools. We want to thank you for demonstrating your commitment to education with your preliminary budget motion to fund CCPS with the additional $13 million for the operating budget. This $13 million is crucial to CCPS meeting its previously negotiated contracts with staff and bus drivers, keeping outdoor school, and funding technology. In recent years, CCPS has been hit hard by inflation. Costs are going up for everyone, especially for insurance and electricity. Healthcare insurance costs have been on the rise. Data from the Maryland Insurance Administration shows a 17% increase in costs over the past 3 years. CCPS expects to pay $6.1 million more for staff healthcare benefits. Additionally, CCPS is paying more for utilities at its 44 school buildings. They estimate $2.8 million more in utility costs for FY26. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, electricity prices in the Baltimore area have risen nearly 45% since 2020. The county recognizes this and is building in a 25% budget increase for electricity at the Department of Public Works. The $13 million that was voted on represents only a 5.5% increase for CCPS. However, insurance costs have risen 17% and electricity has gone up 45% over the last several years. The costs in these categories will continue to grow. Inflationary pressures erode what CCPS can accomplish with their funding, further straining their already lean budget and forcing the school system to lay off staff and cut popular programs. The maintenance of effort calculation does not automatically account for this inflation and should always be the starting point, not the ceiling for allocation to keep the public schools operational, to say nothing of improvements. Our kids deserve every bit of investment we can spare. Please continue to demonstrate your commitment to our public schools and provide the largest employer in the county with adequate resources. The county needs to identify a plan to meet the needs of CCPS over the long term. Investing in CCPS will keep Carroll County a wonderful place to live and raise a family. It is an investment in our children.
Here, what caller?
Yes, caller, if you could please use *6 to unmute. You'll have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself once you've unmuted.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. Catherine Adelaide, a member of the Carroll County Republican Central Committee. Thank you for all that you do and for this opportunity to address the board. I'm also the chair of the Pro-Life Subcommittee, so I've got a big, wonderful pro-life report for you all today. On Wednesday, March 19th, last Wednesday, I attended the probably first ever tax revolt protest in Annapolis, led by Delegate Kathy Szeliga, regarding the $3 billion tax deficit. And you're wondering what's the connection? Well, I went there to make sure people understood the connection between abortion funding and tax debt. My sign read, "Abortion funding is an unconstitutional tax." I was warmly greeted by our Senator Reedy, Delegate Rose, Delegate Tomlinson, and they had the Freedom Caucus there because really our 4 beleaguered Republicans are so outnumbered, they just try to stand on principle at this point, and this is a big one. I want to give a really great shout out to Kim Klacik, the former congressional candidate and radio host on WCVM, who boldly read my sign out loud to make sure everybody understood the connection between abortion funding and the tax problem we have. At this point, there are more abortions performed on non-residents than residents. So it was a great event. On Tuesday, March 25th, while you guys were hammering it out on the budget, I went to a big protest in D.C. at the Department of Justice. You may recall that President Trump pardoned all 9 pro-life protesters who protested an abortion clinic in D.C. that was violating federal partial birth abortion and the Born Alive Infant Protection Act law. They produced the bodies that proved this, And instead of the abortionists being prosecuted, they were all railroaded and thrown into federal prison. They've now been released, and the purpose of the protest was to ask Pam Bondi, to prosecute the abortionists for violating federal law. There's almost zero enforcement of the federal law on abortion, and that's happening in Maryland too. Finally, today is the Maryland March for Life in Annapolis. There are seats still available on a free bus ride at St. John's Catholic Church in Westminster. So meet at 2:45. The bus will leave promptly at 3 o'clock. They have pizza at 4, a youth rally at 5, a mass at St. Mary's at 6. The march starts at 6:30, and the speakers will be from 7:15 to 7:45, speakers and our legislators. And then finally, there is unfortunately, we double scheduled our Carroll County Republican Central Committee meeting is also tonight. They're taking care of that. They'll be electing new officers, but I will be in Annapolis, and you're all warmly invited to join me. Here's my timer. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Administrative open. Any comments?
No, sir.
I'd like to make one to the public comment because I think it's a common misconception. MOE has never been the top ever in Carroll County. 3 times out of the last 30 years, MOE was funded, but it's like this year, of the 13 million, 7.1 or 2 was already in the proposed budget for next year. So never has the county considered that the ceiling. And I just feel that's a misconception, and I thought I'd mention it. But thanks for your comments. It's a lot of good ones in there. Anything else with comments, guys? Agenda review.
Good morning, Wanda. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
And this is depressing. Next week is April. Monday, March 31st, no activities. Tuesday, April Fool's Day, Board of County Commissioner closed, admin for budget. On Wednesday, Maryland Blueprint Town Hall with Superintendent McCabe will be at Career and Tech.
I'll be attending that as well. So.
And on Thursday, closed admin at 8, 9 a.m. open session. Priority Carroll has a proclamation honoring Child Abuse Prevention Month, and legislative update. The next item is community asset mat. Next item, debt book bundled subscription. Next item, stamped concrete for Public Works. Next item, Piney Run watershed study that Mr. Hines told us was coming. Item 7, board direction, potential code amendments for a Chapter 156, adequate public facilities. And public comment, admin open, agenda review. And at 1 p.m., another closed admin session with budget preparation. On Friday, Battle of the Books, Westminster High School, and Battle of the Books at Montessori School. On Saturday, April 5th, is the Christian Farmers Outreach. And I have the podcast. Any changes?
On Saturday, April 5th, and I'll double check, I do believe that is the night of Union Bridge's Fire Company banquet. I'll double check on that, but I will be attending that, whether it's that week or the following week. So, Thank you, Wanda.
Okay, the next week, Monday, April 7th, a solar hearing, the evidential hearing at 1 p.m. On Tuesday, closed admin, budget prep. 7 p.m. 4-H Achievement Program at the Ag Center in Westminster. There's a second public solar hearing for Fanny Dorsey Road, and I will be at that. Commissioner Rothstein will be at the 4-H, and I hate to miss the 4-H. I may, and you don't have to change this, I may try to come late if, depending on how quick or slowly the solar thing. Again, last night we had no public comment. This one, I'm sure we will. On Wednesday, April 9th, Farm Museum Board meeting, Commissioner Vigliotti. And Jane says he's very humorous at those meetings. 2 p.m. solar hearing, that's what she says. Pleasant Valley Solar. 4 p.m. Board of Education meeting in their boardroom at 4 p.m. Thursday, April 10th, 8 a.m. closed admin, 9 a.m. open session, priority carol, legislative update, catastrophic billing and other related medical expenses, Housing Solutions Program grant, Community Partnership Agreement application and accepting the award. Item 5 is the asphalt plant with Public Works. Public comment, agenda review, open session, admin, and then in close for land acquisition. And then 1 p.m. Open session for proposed budget work session. At 5 p.m., United Way of Central Maryland at flood zone, Commissioners Kyler and Rothstein. Friday, April 11th, Battle of the Books at Winters Mill High School and Battle of the Books at South Carroll. I would like to go to the one at Winters Mill. I can't do the previous week at Manval because of a conflict of schedule, but I'd like to go to that. And Commissioner Gordon has the podcast. Any other additions, changes? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.